Well, good morning. Welcome to Christ Table. My name is Kevin Young. So grateful that you are here with us today. If you'd like to know more about Christ Table, you can visit the URL that is right up there in the corner of the screen, www.christstable.today. There you'll find information about everything going on at Christ Table. Would encourage you to sign up for the email list there. Now, we are in the middle of a study called Fear Not. If you'd like more information about this study, that URL that is right there in front of me, go.christstable.today/fearnot is the place where you're going to find information about this study. You can download a guide that gives every day in the study and the readings for that day. You can also download a larger PDF that includes a special study guide dedicated to each and every day of the study with some background information, some discussion questions, some activities and things for you to participate in. And that PDF is absolutely free. Now, if you would like a printed copy of that, then you can get that there as well. We appreciate it whenever you do that because those enable us to continue to bring those to you because of your donations. But either way, the free one is always out there because we are all about giving as many free things away as possible because we don't want to stand in the way of you and being able to move forward on your spiritual journey. Now, in this study, we are not doing a video Bible study for every day of the study. So each week there are 5 days in the study, but only on the second, third, and fourth day of the week are we actually doing a video part of the study. So some is on your own, some is here by video if it's helpful to you, but it is a great study. It's easy to do. It's perfect for Advent, and we encourage you to take advantage of all the resources that are there. So here in our first week on day 4, we are in Psalm chapter 27, verse 14. And we've been talking this week a little bit about fear not and how fear can be driven by the unknown and by the need for control or lack thereof, and how the antidote to fear oftentimes is really trust. And it's not necessarily either or. You're either fearing or you're trusting, or you're fearing or you're trusting. But oftentimes those two things seem to run in parallel with each other and sometimes may cross tracks back and forth to one or the other, depending on whether or not you're in a moment of more fear or more trust. And that's the process, right? So allow the process to play itself out. So whenever we come now today to the next step on this journey of fear not in Psalm chapter 27, verse 14, we're going to, and I would encourage you, frankly, to, if you have the time, to read more in this chapter of Psalms. Really from 1 to 14. Wait patiently for the Lord. Be brave and courageous. Yes, wait patiently for the Lord. In fact, the psalm actually begins with that as well, that wait patiently for the Lord encouragement at the beginning in verse 1, and then it returns to that here again at the end in verse 14, and the content that's in the middle is important. But I think that the most important thing, the thesis, the main point, the big idea, whatever you want to call it here, is this idea of waiting patiently for the Lord. And waiting is what causes fear, right? Waiting is what causes lack of trust. And so if we're going to be able to walk this road of fear towards trying to fear not, or at least fear less and trust more, we're going to have to learn to wait, especially if we follow what we talked about yesterday, where Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 encourages us to trust in God completely. If we're going to be able to trust in God more so or more completely, then we're going to have to learn to wait patiently, because one of the things that you learn in the Bible is that God just does not seem to move on a timetable that seems to be the timetable that we would desire, for one, but really God does not seem to move on a timetable that seems to be advantageous, for second, and for third, oftentimes God seems to move on a timetable that is counterproductive, not just to our best interest, but oftentimes even to God's best interest. And that can be hard to reconcile, because waiting is difficult for a few days, for a few weeks, for a few months, for a few years. But when you're dealing with God, it often sometimes seems as though waiting can last for a lifetime or multiple lifetimes, generations, decades. centuries, millennia. That's some serious waiting. And that can create fear. And that can create trust issues. But it's reality. And part of being able to fear not or fear less requires us to face reality for what it is and then learn how to still press forward, to move, even in the face of realities that may be unlikable from where we sit, but which are also uncontrollable and unknown. Wait patiently for the Lord. Whenever Advent came the first time around, they had been waiting for centuries, right? For Advent, they had been waiting for a really long time for this Messiah to come. So long, in fact, that it seems as though, as far as the Gospels frame it, that the Messiah wasn't recognized whenever whenever Jesus arrived. And though even in our Bibles, there is one page, oftentimes at most, between the Hebrew texts in the Old Testament and the New Testament, that one page, that paragraph split between the very end of the Hebrew scriptures and the very beginning of Matthew chapter 1 is 4 centuries, is 400 years of silence. The waiting had been going on for a long time, but God had not been silent during that waiting. He had been making promises that the Messiah would come, and then silence. Not just for a lifetime, not just for a generation, but for multiple generations. It's tough sometimes to reconcile trust and fear whenever things don't go our way, are completely and utterly outside of our control. Whenever we just simply have to wait on God, whether we like it or not. This is really the celebration of Advent. The patient waiting for God to come through. December 25th, the birth of a baby. We want to rush through that. We want to play the Christmas music and joy to the world before Thanksgiving even gets here. After Thanksgiving is gone, Black Friday, we feel as though we are completely and utterly free and clear to play as much Christmas music and celebrate as much as we want until December 25th. But the reality is, the world waited a really long time for that manger. And Advent as a season isn't so much about celebration. Traditionally, the church hasn't celebrated during those first few weeks of December. That's why it's called Advent season rather than Christmas season. Christmas, the celebration, comes at and after the birth, but beforehand, it's Advent, where they wait for the advent of the promise. It's a season of expectation, of anticipation, of longing, of fear, of waiting for a really, really long time. Sometimes patiently, sometimes not patiently. But either way, the waiting is there. It's not shortened. It's not lengthened. It is what it is. And so you either do it patiently or impatiently. So this idea of waiting patiently for the Lord, though, in the Hebrew, this is a very kind of tense and anxious expectation. It's the image here is kind of sitting on the edge of your seat and waiting for a really, really long time, and doing so with as much patience as one can. And the only way that you can wait patiently is really, frankly, to wait with trust. That waiting will at some point someday be resolved. The longing and the expectation will be over. That there will be no more reason for fear, because God has always come through on his promises. Not in our time, not when we think is best, but when he does. And oftentimes not in the way that we want him to. Not solving the problem in the way that we think is right, but solving it in a way that is sometimes the opposite. Sometimes doesn't look at all like it's God that's done it. But it is. And all those things have to be reconciled. The fear, the waiting, the trusting. We have to face the reality of those things. And I got to tell you, I've been around long enough to be able to honestly and concretely say that waiting really sucks. Waiting really sucks. I am not a great waiter. I'm just not. I can have patience sometimes for other people and other things, but not so much myself, and oftentimes not so much with God. And that can get me stuck, where I stop trusting and where I begin fearing. And so rather than fearing less or fearing not, I end up fearing more. Because I can't trust and be patient. And it's a reality that we have to face. And I would love to give a pie in the sky religious answer and say, just wave this magic wand, read this verse, and do this, believe this, and all will be okay. All of those things will be wiped away. But really what we do in those situations is we just push it down and ignore it. And then it comes back 10 times stronger at some point down the road when you least expect it and when you really don't need it because it's unhelpful. And so it's better that here in these small moments, in these less difficult situations, or in these seasons like Advent, where we learn to sit and feel and wait and understand and practice patience for those moments when we're really going to need it. For those moments when the trust is barely, if there at all, but we have trusted so much and learned how to wait well, patiently, in other times, that the fear will not overtake us during the most difficult times where waiting really, truly does suck. You see, all of these things are tied together. Fear, trust, and patience. Expressing these things and the difficulty of doing them in reality may not necessarily solve all of them, but getting them out, looking at them, facing them, and our struggle with them is the first step to being able to truly move towards a life of fearing not or fearing less. It's been good to be with you today. Looking forward to being with you again next week. Now, tomorrow there's another day of study, day 5, but we'll be back by video next Monday, and we'll look forward to seeing you then. And until that time,